Hello guys, welcome to Cloud Guru channel. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about how we can use Azure Virtual Network Gateway to allow our users to collect remotely to our Azure infrastructure. For having the connections back to Azure infrastructure, there are two possibilities. I mean, if you're working or if your users are working from an office or from an organization head office, you can always have site-to-site VPN. You can always have an express connection as well. But there is another way that's basically allow your users to connect to the Azure infrastructure even if they are at home. That is called point to site connection. It basically is based on the method of using an SSL client. So as you can see in our diagram that we have our user is sitting in a home based environment using his laptop, and on his laptop he can use a client. For example, he can use any SSL client, but in this diagram we're showing Azure VPN client, and we will show you in this demo how we can download the Azure VPN client. But once it is downloaded, we can actually get it installed on our workstation or the laptop of our user. Then on the right hand side, as you can see in this diagram, we have two VNets, a hub VNet and a spoke VNet. And in the hub VNet we have a couple of subnets. As you can see, there is a gateway subnet. So in this hub VNet we are going to deploy Azure Virtual Network Gateway, and we will configure it for the P2S connections, point to site connection, through which users can connect using any SSL VPN client, for example Azure VPN. And as you can see in the architecture diagram, we also have a spoke VNet, and a spoke VNet has a VNet pairing with hub VNet. So essentially, if we connect using Azure P2S connection through Azure Virtual Network Gateway, which is sitting in the hub VNet, we can easily access any machine which is sitting in spoke VNet, for example, in the app subnet of the spoke VNet. So let's jump to the demo. In this demo, basically, we're going to deploy Azure Virtual Network Gateway, and then we'll configure it for the accepting the P2S connection using certificates. Okay, so as you can see, we logged into the our Azure environment. As you can see, as per our design, we have two VNets. Let's go and check what is the IP address schema for our hub VNet. As you can see here, we have 10.1.0.0/16 as per our design, and we also have a management subnet over here. We also have the spoke 1 VNet, which is 10.2.0.0, and it has I think it has one subnet. Let's see the subnets in spoke VNet. Yes, though we can see that we have app 1 subnet in spoke 1 VNet. So let's go and create the gateway, the Azure Virtual Network Gateway in our hub VNet. So let's go to the subnet. To create the Azure Virtual Network Gateway, first of all you have to add a subnet. So let's add the subnet first, and as you can see here, there is called gateway subnet. Let's select the gateway subnet, and we can give an IP address of, let's say, 10.1.20/26 should be more than enough for gateway subnet. So let's add the gateway subnet in our Azure VNet, hub VNet. So we have added the gateway subnet in hub VNet. Now we will go and search for virtual network gateway. So virtual network gateway, we're going to create the virtual network gateway, and as you can see, virtual network gateway, we can call it as a gateway 1. The region is fine, East US. And there are two types of the gateway types. We have VPN gateway type, and we have express route gateway type. So in our demo, we are going ahead with the VPN gateway type, which means that the gateway will operate or will allow the traffic on the public internet. If you have an express route in your environment, you can also configure virtual network gateway or to use this express route. The second option is about the SKU. There are different SKUs available. As you can see, this big list. There are VPN gateway 1 type, gateway 2, basically there are type 1, type 2, type 3. They are actually called generation 1, generation 2, generation 3 VPN gateways. And then you also have generation 1 in availability zone, generation 3 in availability zone, generation 4 and generation 5 in availability zone. In our demo, we will go with generation 2 VPN gateway. Then you have to select the hub VNet, and as you can see, it's automatically picked up the gateway subnet. We have to create an IP here, so let's call it gateway 1 pub IP. So this is the public IP of our virtual network gateway. The next step is, do you want active mode? This is actually, if you go with the active mode, it will allow you to have the full redundancy for your virtual network gateway. In our demo, we will go with a single virtual network gateway, and we will disable the active mode for now. Configure BGP. Configure BGP will allow you to establish the BGP routes with your on-prem network if you have any routers which allow the BGP sessions. In our demo, because our focus is to establish the point-to-site network connectivity using our virtual network gateway, so we'll keep the BGP disabled for now. So next step is tagging. If you want to add some tag, you can add the tag, and let's go and review and create it. So we are creating a generation 2 type VPN gateway in hub VNet, and we are utilizing our gateway subnet, which we already have provisioned. So we start the deployment of our virtual network gateway. It will take at least 10 to 15 minutes to get the deployment finished. So I will pause the video and come back once this virtual network gateway is up and running. Okay, so our virtual appliance gateway is deployed. As you can see here, it's ready. It's up and running and fully functional. Now the next step is to do the configuration. The configuration we have to do is the point-to-site configuration. So let's go to the point-to-site configuration, and let's click config now. Now here basically you have to do the address pool configuration. So address pool configuration means that what are the IP addresses will be obtained by a client. For example, if I have trying to connect to this Azure gateway, virtual gateway, and trying to get it connect to the Azure environment through this gateway 1, what is the IP address which I will get? So you have to define here a subnet which must be outside your VNet configuration. So as you know that we have in the VNet side, we have used 10.1.0.0/16 and 10.2.0.0/16 configuration. So here we can go with, for example, as per our design, 192.168.68.0/24. Tunnel type, you can there are different options available. You can go with IKE version 2, you can go with SSTP, you can also go with the OpenVPN, depending upon what client you want to use. So in our demo, we are going to use Azure VPN client, so I would go with IKE version 2 and OpenVPN, so that both of the options are available when we try to connect to our Azure when we try to connect to this virtual network gateway. Authentication type is very important, because it actually tells you that what authentication method the virtual network gateway will use when the client will connect to this virtual network gateway. I will go with the Azure certificate. If I go with the Azure certificate, what actually it means is that I have to have a root CA installed on my virtual network gateway, and I also need to have my client certificates installed on my client side. There are multiple options available if I go with the Azure certificate. In this demo, we're going to use Azure certificate, and when you go with the Azure certificate, the root CA, which as you can see here, is asking for the root configuration and details about the root CA or the root certificate. You can go with any root certificate from VeriSign or any third party if your organization has already purchased it. For this demo, I'm going for a self-signed certificate, but it supports basically third-party certificates as well. So let's go with the our own, so we can call it, let's say, root CA Yes, and then I will put the date today. Now here you have to put the information about your root certificate. Now the important point is that if you want to use the self-signed certificate with your virtual network gateway, Microsoft has provided a complete step. I will put this the link of this website. This is actually Microsoft website to execute the steps which are required to create the root certificate as well as the client certificate. As you can see here on this link, there is a PowerShell given to you which can be used for creating self-signed root certificate, and then you can also use can follow the steps on this website to generate a client-side certificate. So first of all, if I am running on my Windows 11 machine, so there is a cert manager. If you go here and personal and certificate, there are no certificates here right now, as you can see, related to the Azure site configuration. So what we will going to do is I will open a Windows PowerShell. And then I will actually copy paste the first. We're doing the first step, which is the self-signed root certificate. So we're going to create it on our Windows PowerShell. Okay, so this actually should be able to create a certificate, a root certificate called P2S root certificate. Let's go back to our cert manager. And try to refresh. You can see here we got this P2S root certificate, which is the root certificate. It might not show, so you have to go out of the cert manager and then re-execute the cert manager. Now this is the root certificate you've generated. The next step is generate the client-side certificate. So this is the step. They have given a PowerShell script to create a client-side certificate. So I'll just copy it, and it's going to create as a client-side certificate called P2S child certificate. You can, if you want, you can change the name of the certificate as well. So now we are creating the client child. We have already created actually a client-side certificate. So let's go and check the cert manager. Cert manager again, manage certificate. Let's go to the personal and then certificate. As you can see here, we find the client-side certificate. So now we have the root CA as well as we have a self-signed root CA and also a client-side certificate on our Windows machine. So our next step is to export the certificate which we have just created. So let's create the export. So go to the all tasks and click on export. Then we have to say next. I don't want to export the private key. Let's go with the base 64. You can call it root cert, and you can put the date if you want. It's 2nd of February, so sorry, 10th of February and 2024. So we are putting it on our desktop. So we put on the desktop. Okay, so this is our export of our root certificate. Now next step is to export our client side of the certificate. So now we are going to export the client certificate. So let's go back to our all task options, like export, do the next, and here we are selecting the export the private key and leave the other things on the default. There's no need to change anything here. And then we go next. It will ask for a password. You can put a password here. Okay, so this is the password is done. I can put on the desktop. I can call it client cert 10/02/2024. Okay, and then save it on our desktop. The rest is fine. So now we have actually a root certificate, and we also have a client certificate. So let's open the root certificate, and as you can see here we have some information. So you have to copy this one and go back to your Azure portal. Let's go back to our Azure portal and our configuration for root certificate, and so you put there, all looks good. We will just save it. So now we have configured our virtual network gateway with a root certificate, a self-signed root certificate, and next step is to install the client certificate on our machine or our Windows machine which we are trying to connect. So our next step is to install the client certificate on our workstation or laptop from where we are going to connect to the Azure environment. So as you have seen that we have done, this client certificate is here. So just double click on this one. So just run it, and it says that welcome to certificate import wizard. So basically it is going to import the certificate from the exported file, and because this client certificate is definitely required when we try to connect to Azure virtual network gateway. So let's go and click next. We don't want to change the user information. The current user is perfectly fine. So by the way, this certificate import process you can also execute through any MDM tool like Intune, can be used for that purpose as well. So it automatically picks up the exported file configuration, and next it will ask for the password which we have put there, and yes, go ahead, finish. So now it is actually importing a certificate from this file into the machine. So import was successful. So at this stage what we have done so far now, just to recap, that we have installed a root CA, we have configured the virtual network gateway, and we have also put this root CA into the virtual network gateway configuration, and we also have created a client certificate and installed it on our workstation or laptop. So our next step is to go with the Azure SSL client and try to connect back to our Azure virtual network gateway. So let's go ahead for the next step. So we are actually again go back to our virtual network gateway 1, and on the left hand side, if you go to the point to site session configuration, so we will actually download the configuration of our client from this option. So as you can see, we have point to site configuration, and here you have the download VPN client. So let's download the VPN client for it. It will actually download the configuration for our virtual network gateway, which we can use it for our client configuration. So as you can see, it is, so we can download it. So it's downloaded. Let's go and so as you can see here, we have when we click from the Azure portal, we got some configuration specific to different client essentially, which can be used to connect back to Azure network or to this virtual network gateway. So we have Azure VPN. You can also have the generic configuration. You can also have Open VPN client. So there are different options available, but essentially on this, if I click on the Azure VPN, there is an XML file which is basically the configuration which we can use for our virtual network configuration. So essentially what I will do is I'll just copy this location, and on my workstation or laptop I already have Azure VPN client. You can also download from I'll put the link from where you can download Azure VPN client. So this Azure VPN client and you click on plus sign, you can also do the import. So let's go for the import option, and here I'll import this and then just say open. Okay, so basically what I did was I just extracted the gateway1.zip file to a folder. As you can see here, I extracted it into a directory called gateway1. So instead of trying through the gateway zip file, I'll now try with the gateway1 folder which has been extracted. So let's go back to our point to site configuration on Azure Gateway. So as you can see, we've already downloaded the VPN client. So let's go back to our Azure VPN client, and this time I will go with the import option one more time, and instead of putting the zip file, I will go with the extracted folder and double click on this one. So it's now asking for password and the key file. So in this case we will go with the client certificate and we'll put the child certificate which we have already created, and then we will just save it. So here now we have Hub VNet already imported from the certificate, and let's try to connect. As you say, it's connecting right now, and it is connected. So our laptop is connected to the Azure environment using the virtual network gateway. So our next step is to make sure that we are connecting to our Azure environment. As you can see, our Hub VNet is connected using Azure VPN client, or Azure VPN client is showing as connected. And if I go back to my laptop or workstation, I can see that that I got an IP on my point-to-point connection. As you can see, I'm getting the IP 192.168.68.2, which is perfectly fine. So let's do a test of the connectivity to our machine. We have two machines right now on our environment, server 1 and server 2. Server 2 is basically sitting in as you can see, let's go back to the networking and check which so it's, as you can see, it's connected to Hub VNet management subnet, and it has an IP of 10.1.1.4, but it doesn't have any public IP. So let's try to connect to this machine using our Azure VPN client and making use of the advantage that we are already connected to our virtual network gateway. So as you can see, it is connected, and I can log in as well, hopefully, if my password is okay, good. So as you can see, is I'm logging, yeah, so I can log in. So as you can see, by using the point to site connection of Azure, or the connection back to the Azure Virtual Network Gateway, we were able to connect to our virtual machine in Azure. And it's a very good feature of Azure, a point to site connection, and you can actually utilize it to connect to any other machine. For example, server 1 in our example is connected, is actually sitting another VNet, but if we have VNet to VNet pairing defined, we can also connect to that machine. So hopefully you like my video. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.